Suspect my pregnant wife may have cheated, so I'm uncertain if I should demand a paternity test or wait silently. My wife, 38F, and I, 39 male, have been together for 12 years, and our relationship has always felt just about perfect. In all that time, I can think of only 2 or 3 moments where we actually raised our voices to each other. We do nearly everything together, but we've never had issues with giving each other space to follow our own interests. We found our dream house, both of us have great, high-paying jobs with excellent work-life balance. Life was as close to flawless as it gets. For the last 2 years, we'd been trying to get pregnant with no luck. We were right on the verge of turning to fertility treatments when I came home from a work trip, and suddenly, she tells me she's pregnant. At first, I remember my thoughts getting stuck on a strange detail. Hadn't we both agreed not to try during the time we were getting fertility testing last month? But I shrugged it off, thinking my memory was just off, especially since we'd been putting in the effort often enough that it was hard to remember the exact details. My job takes me all over the country. Before COVID, I was on the road up to 40 weeks a year, and now, it's still more than a week every month. Over the last 4 or 5 years, my wife had become pretty close friends with a coworker of hers. Let's call him Matt, about 34 years old. I know him and his wife, and he's not a stranger to me. Matt's been around for years, sometimes coming over to our house, sometimes with his wife, sometimes without, even when I'm not at home. I was never suspicious, but privately, I always kept in mind that there's always at least a 1% chance any spouse might go outside the relationship, just as a reality check, not to take my wife or anyone I care about for granted. She's never given me a reason to distrust her, but I reminded myself that absolutely anything is possible. About a month ago, while I was out of state on another work trip, my wife mentioned that Matt was coming by for dinner. Not weird at all, it had happened plenty of times before. Our house has a security system, installed after an unrelated incident a few years back. It has cameras inside and out, and both of us can access the live feed from our phones. I mostly use it to check on our dog when we're away, and we both know this. It's commonplace for us to goof around, talking to each other through the cameras when one of us is traveling. That night, I pulled up the camera from my phone, and I froze. My 4 months pregnant wife was lying on her side on the floor, and Matt was straddling her legs, using a foam roller to massage her hips. I felt my chest tighten. What the hell was this? I rewound the footage. They'd been eating dinner together, chatting like normal, then moved to the couch and ended up under the same blanket. Even though they were feet to feet, our couch isn't exactly a mansion of space. Shortly after, they moved to the floor, right where I'd caught them when I logged in. I quickly texted her. I could see both of them on the cameras, they looked like deer in headlights. Matt left immediately, and just like that, we were in the middle of this argument. My wife wasn't mad that I confronted her but emphatic that nothing at all had happened, nothing ever would happen, and everything I saw was innocent. She was genuinely in pain from the pregnancy, which I knew she'd struggled with recently. I pressed her on the one thing I couldn't shake. If I were home, would you have been comfortable doing this in front of me? She hesitated, then admitted, no, probably not. That was all I needed to hear. I told her I needed space, and we'd talk when I was home, 3 days later. Those 3 days alone in a hotel halfway across the country ate at me. For the first time, a weird gut feeling gnawed at my mind. What if what I saw wasn't as innocent as she claimed? What if my 1% chance, the margin I always kept in my mind, had just rocketed up to 10% or 20%? What if this baby isn't mine? When I finally got home, the tension in the house was palpable. She was on eggshells, and neither of us brought it up at first. Finally, 2 days later, she broke the silence, breaking down, insisting through tears that nothing happened and that she would never do that to me. She didn't go overboard trying to prove her innocence, which I took as a good sign. We ended up talking through it, managing to find our way to a place where we could move forward. For now, I'm still trying to process everything, still trying to figure out how to rebuild my trust after all these years. The more I revisit the idea, the more I conclude that maybe their friendship really is just that. Maybe Matt has other intentions, but from everything I've ever seen, my wife never seemed interested. I've been around them together countless times and never picked up on anything weird, but the part that's absolutely crushing me? If I'm wrong, and something did happen, maybe I could figure out how to deal with it. But what if this child isn't mine? That's the thing that gnaws at me. In all the arguments and deep conversations we've had since this happened, that thought has never once been raised, by either of us. And yet it sits between us, silent and heavy. Update 1. Some really compelling thoughts have started to sink in. Addressing the situation now, directly, might be wiser than waiting. It's not something I was seriously considering before, but now, it's taking up much more space in my mind. My focus isn't just on my relationship. I understand why people might zero in on that, but honestly, the burning question for me right now is all about paternity. My wife and I share a pretty open dynamic. We talk about just about everything, and we haven't shied away from this either. I haven't convinced myself that nothing happened, but that's not the point where I'm stuck. It's that I simply can't get out of my head. Am I truly this child's father? And here's the truth. If I ever reach the point of needing to track, spy on, or use Life 360 on my wife, that would be the end of us. That's not how we function, and the second my relationship would require that kind of surveillance, it's already over. I can't imagine wanting that for myself or for anyone. So, we're working intentionally on rebuilding trust, step by step, because although my stubborn belief in a 1% chance something was off has swelled to closer to 10%, I'm not going to let suspicion alone unravel everything. Let me be clear, I am taking my relationship and my marriage seriously. But if the result of all this is that the child isn't mine, there's just no conversation left to have. That line is absolute for me. I've already discussed the legal aspect with my lawyer, and thankfully, I don't live in a state where the birth certificate would complicate things. If I have the paperwork proving I'm not the biological father, then the path to divorce is simple. Both of us are financially independent, so neither of us would be devastated in that way, regardless of what happens. For now, I'll keep moving forward, wrestling with these questions, and I'll come back with an update once things get resolved. Update 2. She had been out of state on a business trip until late last night. Since it was Friday and she worked from home in our kitchen, I decided it was finally time to talk. I asked if we could have a conversation, brought up the subject that had been weighing on my mind, and asked if she'd be willing to take a test. She immediately said yes. She told me there was absolutely zero doubt and nothing to even cause her a moment's hesitation. She assured me she was fine doing it right then. I did add one caveat: if the procedure was in any way invasive, and our doctors said it was better to wait, then I was absolutely fine waiting until it was low risk. I'm not a doctor, I have no idea what the risks might be, or what exactly the test would involve at this stage, but I wanted her to know I would never push for something that could be dangerous for her or the baby. At this point, I'm not sure exactly when we'll be able to do the test, but it's out in the open and she's fully aware. We're getting one when it's the right time. Our conversation turned out to be decent, even longer than I expected. Now we're sitting together having lunch, just the two of us. She has no idea about the tangled web of thoughts I wrote and all the worries I spilled out on Reddit. She doesn't know what's been swirling in my mind, or about all the kind strangers who convinced me it was okay to ask for reassurance, strangers who made me realize that our relationship is already built on openness, and, if there wasn't anything to worry about, she wouldn't mind taking the test anyway. The real reason for my hesitation wasn't mistrust. I've been more afraid of adding stress to her already at-risk pregnancy. With everything we went through just to get here in the first place, the last thing I wanted was to burden her with extra worry if my doubts caused her pain. It took us so long to get pregnant, her health is everything to me, and I would never want to jeopardize that for either of us. Update 3. No, I'm not going to get Matt's wife involved, at least not on purpose. I honestly don't see why I'd do that just to be vindictive. I'm certainly not going to cover for him, but his relationship is his own, and mine is my responsibility. I have no interest in making things worse or stirring up unnecessary drama. Whatever is happening between him and his wife simply isn't any of my business. Update 4. Hi folks, so I haven't been touching this account at all as I was mostly bombarded by people telling me I'm an AI, wishing my wife a miscarriage, claiming she's going to get a secret abortion to save herself. Or that I'm a clown for not keeping it real and destroying someone else's marriage over speculation only. I'm amazed that people are still following this and invested in it after all this time. Here's where we are at. Yes, my wife is still very much pregnant. She's in the hard to pick things up off the floor stage. She's due in 8 weeks. Holy shit, 6 weeks actually, just looked at the calendar. We are getting weekly ultrasounds at this point. He's already about 5 pounds and has a big ol' head. Her and I had some very long direct conversations about everything. She is adamant that nothing has ever happened and nothing ever would. For a while she was pretty upset with herself for causing this and causing my feelings of doubt. I've done my best to remedy that as I've got to keep stress off her as much as possible right now. But it will for sure be revisited after the birth. As I've been saying the entire time. I'm really only worried about the child and the birth going well, etc. Well. Mostly maybe not only the only thing we still really disagree on is I thought he was getting too close because he had developed feelings or was getting attention that he wasn't getting elsewhere maybe etc. She doesn't see it that way but has also said it's possible, but if so she was blind to it. I told her I wanted a paternity test and she immediately agreed to it and said no problem at all. My only stipulation was that it couldn't be medically risky or stress-inducing at all as she's a high-risk pregnancy. We both spoke to her doctors about it and they basically told us that our only option was to go to the courthouse because they wouldn't do one without the law involved, which we both thought was ridiculous. Her doctor was a bit thrown off by it so I didn't press very hard, it was honestly her pretty much demanding it. I knew there were other options. I looked into those other options and ultimately decided to wait until the birth and I have a lab already set up to do it, ready to go. I'm 95% sure it's unnecessary but I'm still getting one for my peace of mind and mostly so that nothing will come between me and my child. For those of you that have left me messages of support that I didn't get back to, thank you. I'm going to spend some time going through them tonight before I run off again. For those of you who've left messages that think I should be acting like a 17-year-old high school student and either getting violent, purposely cheating on my wife to prove a point, or other childish trash. Thanks for the entertainment at least. Stop watching TLC and TikTok. That dumbass drama ain't the way, kiddos. And to the one person who suggested I cause an accident with my wife, I hope you end up behind bars someday. It's really likely I'm not going to come back here after tonight until after I get the results from the lab. So if you're really still interested in the results, come back in 1.5 to 2 months. I've been told the results take about 48 hours once submitted. I'll give you your Maury moment then. Just as a preempt, I'm going to post something I responded to someone else on the last post just a minute ago, but I likely won't check this account until after the birth after this. Comment number 1. People seem to be reading into the reasons I thought all this was more than what I said. I've seen dude. They were in bed together. You caught them or they were cuddling under a blanket. Totally get how the telephone game works. But I never said any of that. So I'll clarify, I guess. Here's exactly what I saw. They were on the sectional couch in my living room at either ends under the same large blanket, feet to feet. The massage. She was laying on the floor in her side, he was sitting by her feet and rolling one of those big foam rollers on her back and side, which is something I do all the time because she's been complaining about back and outer hip pain. Still enough for me to raise a concern with her. But people seem to be reading into that as, they were basically dry humping and thought you couldn't see. Comment number 2. I'm being told that I'm being oblivious and ignoring the obvious. And letting her and him off the hook. This is a direct comment I left someone giving my thoughts on that. I think they said something like, this is what guys who choose to have their head in the sand say. My response, yeah, I'm pretty well aware of that. I've also stated many times that my wife is a high at risk pregnancy, so I've decided to try and not explode things until I know something for a fact and risk what would potentially be the only opportunity I have to have a child at my age. If it turns out I'm wrong and that happens because I blew all this up over nothing, I don't know how I could live with myself. And my marriage likely wouldn't survive that anyway. So I don't see that as a winning option. If I deal with it calmly and like an adult, and if I'm wrong, then great, we can move on. And if I'm right, then it can still be dealt with accordingly with facts and not speculation. If the child is mine, and the birth goes well, then we have a healthy child and I can deal with the remainder of any damage she has or hasn't done without risking potentially the only child I'm going to have. Trust me. I'm not ignoring it, I'm choosing to support my wife to get through the pregnancy first. Then I'll deal with the rest of it. It's probably been the hardest thing I've ever done emotionally. But here we are. I know I'm a sarcastic sob in some of these comments, but honestly, thank you for everyone's concern and I have gotten some good advice from people. Mostly this has been a bit cathartic to write all this down as. Most of my friends are toxic dudes who are more interested in fighting about golf or some other pointless shit. Update 5. Labor was induced for us early in the morning on the 26th. What followed was a wild and exhausting 30-hour marathon of labor. I couldn't believe it just kept going. When it came time, she pushed for close to 3 hours, determined and strong, but there was just no progress. Eventually, that meant a C-section, and while the whole ordeal was overwhelming, the moment I saw our son, perfectly healthy, and honestly a bit of a tank, I felt the weight lift. Maybe not so surprising, considering I was almost a 10-pound baby myself. The days since have been a whirlwind. Recovery for her hasn't exactly been a walk in the park, she's been struggling, and some days are harder than others, but every tiny step forward means a lot. The hospital tells us we'll finally be discharged on Tuesday, and that's been the one thing I keep looking forward to. Since we live just 2 miles from the hospital, I sneak home now and then to shower and, if I'm lucky, catch an hour or 2 of sleep, but otherwise I've hardly left her side. And then there's the paternity test, a whole strange mix of feelings bundled together with everything else, the joy, the exhaustion, and, yeah, to be honest, a touch of embarrassment. We haven't started the test, but it's all set up, ready to go as soon as we get home on Tuesday. I'll finally have an answer soon, maybe in another week and a half. Here's the thing, though, I've looked at this kid, really looked, and, my honest opinion, he's mine. Matt and I are practically opposites, coming from totally different backgrounds. I'm 6 feet 3 inches and about 240 pounds, while he's maybe 5 feet 8 inches, 175 or so. For a long time I figured newborn babies just all look kind of the same, aside from obvious family traits, but this big guy? He's got features that could only have come from me. Sure, we're still doing the test for peace of mind, but I really don't feel worried anymore. I'll share the final update once that result is in. Update 6. The baby is as healthy as could be so far. As for my wife, she's been going through a rough time. Our little one arrived on September 27th, after a grueling 30 hours of labor that ended in a C-section. He weighed a healthy 7 pounds 10 ounces, but things took a hard turn with my wife's health. We were only supposed to stay in the hospital for 4 days, but ended up being there for 8. Since coming home, she's had to go back to the hospital twice, and right now, as I sit in the car with our son, she's in the emergency room again. She's making some progress, but still struggling through a few things. We always knew this would be tough because of some issues she already had before the pregnancy. There have been hurdles, but we keep pushing through together. On the paternity front, the results came in this morning, greater than 9,999% match that I am the father. I pretty much already knew deep down, but having that certainty feels like a massive weight off my shoulders. Now, there is no question. I can truly put that behind me. My wife and I have had a lot of long conversations about everything, especially around the time all of this first started coming up, before the birth. We're in a really good place now. Sure, these memories will always exist, but they've helped us see where we both need to work on communication. That's something we're committed to now, for our sake and our son's. I also saw Matt today. That's been resolved. I'm convinced what I saw, his visit, helping her with pain, Was just a friend helping out, the same way I do. I'm satisfied there was nothing more to it. We're not where we imagined we'd be, but we're together and facing every challenge as it comes. That's what matters. Update 7. It's been 3 months since my last post, and I honestly wasn't planning on coming back here. But something happened last week that's completely turned everything upside down again, and I need to get this out of my head. Our son is doing great, he's hitting all his milestones, sleeping through the night most of the time, and honestly just being the perfect baby we never thought we'd have. My wife's recovery took longer than expected, but she's finally back to herself physically. We'd been doing well, really well. The trust issues seemed like ancient history, and I was starting to feel foolish for ever doubting her. Then last Tuesday happened. I was working from home while she took the baby to his 3-month checkup. Nothing unusual, I'd done the same thing for his 2-month appointment. But about an hour after she left, I got a text from her saying the appointment was running late and she'd probably grab lunch afterward. Fine, whatever. Around 2 p.m., I decided to take a break and walk the dog. As I'm coming back up our street, I see Matt's car parked 3 houses down from ours, not in front of our house, but close enough that it caught my attention. I slowed down, and that's when I saw him walking back toward his car from the direction of our house. The thing is, my wife was supposed to be at the doctor's office 20 minutes away. I didn't confront him. I just watched him drive off, then went inside and checked our security cameras. Sure enough, Matt had been at our front door about 10 minutes earlier. He'd knocked, waited around for maybe 2 minutes, then left. The cameras don't cover the sides of our house, so I couldn't see if he'd tried other entrances. Here's where it gets weird. When my wife got home around 3:30, I casually asked how the appointment went. She said it was fine. They grabbed lunch at that little cafe near the pediatrician's office, and showed me a receipt from 1:45 p.m. The timeline worked perfectly, she really had been where she said she was, but why was Matt at our house when he knew she wouldn't be home? And why didn't he mention it to either of us? I spent the next few days trying to rationalize it. Maybe he forgot about the appointment. Maybe he was just dropping something off. Maybe he was checking on something for us. But the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. Especially because after everything we'd been through, wouldn't the normal thing be to text first? Saturday, I couldn't take it anymore. I asked my wife if Matt had mentioned stopping by the house while she was out. She looked genuinely confused and said no, why would he? When I told her what I'd seen, her face went completely white. She immediately pulled out her phone and called him. Put it on speaker. When he answered, she asked directly if he'd been by our house Tuesday afternoon. There was this pause, maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like forever, and then he said yeah, he'd stopped by hoping to see the baby but realized, after he got there, that it was probably appointment day. The way he said it felt rehearsed. Like he'd been expecting the question. My wife seemed satisfied with the explanation, but I wasn't. After she went to bed that night, I did something I swore I'd never do. I went through her phone. I found exactly what I was looking for and exactly what I was hoping I wouldn't find. There were messages between her and Matt from that Tuesday. Not many, but enough. Around noon, she'd texted him that she was heading to the doctor. His response was just. But then at 2:15 p.m., right around the time I saw him at our house, he'd texted her, stopped by but you weren't home obviously lol. Her response, sent at 2:47 p.m., why didn't you just text first? That's weird. His response, Ike was in the neighborhood. No big deal. But here's the thing that's eating me alive, she never mentioned this exchange to me, not when I asked about him stopping by, not when she called him in front of me. She acted like she had no idea he'd been there, but she'd known all along. Why would she lie about something so small? And why would Matt be in the neighborhood of our house when he lives 15 minutes in the opposite direction and works downtown? I haven't said anything to her yet. Part of me thinks I'm losing my mind, reading too much into innocent interactions because of what happened before, but part of me feels like I'm seeing the same pattern again. Little lies, weird timing, behavior that doesn't quite add up. The paternity test proved the baby is mine, and I really thought that closed the book on all this. But now I'm wondering if I've been looking at this completely wrong. What if the massage incident wasn't the beginning of something? What if it was the middle? What if I caught them scaling back, not ramping up? I don't know what to do. Do I confront her about the text messages and admit I went through her phone? Do I try to investigate more? Or do I try to let this go and hope I'm just being paranoid? The worst part is that everything else is so good right now. Our son is perfect, we're both healthy, work is going well for both of us. I don't want to blow up our lives over text messages and a 5-minute visit. But I also can't shake the feeling that I'm being played for a fool. I keep telling myself that if something was really going on, they wouldn't be this sloppy about it. But then again, people make mistakes when they think they're safe. I honestly don't know if I'm overthinking this or if my gut is trying to tell me something I don't want to hear. Update 8. I couldn't let it go. For 3 weeks after finding those texts, I was walking around like a zombie, going through the motions at work, playing with our son, having normal conversations with my wife, but, inside I felt like I was slowly going insane. The breaking point came last Friday. I was supposed to fly out Sunday morning for a 4-day work trip to Denver, my first extended travel since the baby was born. On Thursday night, while my wife was giving the baby a bath, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced over and saw Matt's name. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But I did. The message preview read, "All clear this weekend? Want to?" That's all I could see without unlocking her phone, but it was enough to make my blood run cold. All clear this weekend? When I'd be 3 states away. I spent Thursday night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. By Friday morning, I'd made a decision that probably makes me a terrible person. I was going to test them. I called my boss and told him I had a family emergency. Pushed my flight to Tuesday, but I didn't tell my wife. As far as she knew, I was still leaving Sunday morning as planned. Sunday came, and I went through the whole charade. Packed my bag, kissed her goodbye, drove to the airport. But instead of getting on a plane, I drove to a hotel about 30 minutes from our house and checked in under my name. I spent Sunday afternoon setting up what I guess you'd call surveillance. I downloaded one of those phone tracking apps, not proud of it, but I needed to know. I also repositioned one of our exterior security cameras so it had a better view of our driveway, something I could do remotely from the app. Sunday night, nothing happened. My wife's location stayed home all day, no unusual texts that I could see from the few times I checked our security system. I started feeling like maybe I really was losing my mind. Monday morning around 10 a.m., I got a notification that there was activity at our front door. I pulled up the camera feed and watched Matt's car pull into our driveway. This time, he didn't park down the street. This time, my wife opened the door before he even knocked. I watched them hug, not a quick friendly hug, but the kind of hug where you hold on just a beat too long. Then they both went inside, and my cameras couldn't see anything else. I sat in that hotel room for 2 hours, checking my phone every 5 minutes. The tracking app showed my wife's phone hadn't moved from our house. Matt's car was still in our driveway. At 12:30, I watched him leave. Same thing as when he arrived, my wife came to the door with him. Another long hug. This time, I could see her reach up and touch his face before he walked to his car. I threw up. Actually threw up, right there in the hotel bathroom. But I didn't go home. Some part of me knew that if I confronted them now, they'd just deny everything, say I was crazy, say I was seeing things that weren't there. I needed more. Tuesday morning, I flew to Denver as originally planned. But I'd already rescheduled my meetings to end Thursday instead of Wednesday, giving myself an extra day I didn't tell anyone about. Wednesday afternoon, I got another door notification. Same thing, Matt's car, the hug, him staying for over 2 hours. But this time, something else happened that made everything crystal clear. Around 4 p.m., I watched my 3-month-old son's stroller get pushed out the front door. My wife, Matt, and my baby went for a walk together around our neighborhood. Like a little family. I have no idea how to describe what I felt watching that. It wasn't just anger or betrayal, it was like something broke inside my chest. Thursday morning, instead of flying home, I drove. I needed time to think, to figure out what I was going to do with what I knew. I stopped at a rest area in Kansas and just sat in my car for 3 hours, staring at nothing. I got home Thursday night around 8 p.m. My wife was so happy to see me, kept saying how much she'd missed me, how the baby had been asking for daddy. She seemed completely normal. No guilt, no nervousness, nothing. But when I looked at my son, all I could think about was that image of the 3 of them walking around our neighborhood together. I haven't said anything yet. It's been 4 days, and I'm living in this weird purgatory where I know the truth but I'm pretending I don't. She has no idea that I know, and honestly, I have no idea what my next move is. Part of me keeps hoping there's some innocent explanation for all of this, but I can't think of what it would be. 2-hour visits while I'm out of town, intimate hugs, family walks with my baby, none of that feels innocent. The hardest part is that she seems genuinely happy. With me, with our son, with our life. If she's having an affair, she's either the best actress in the world, or she's somehow compartmentalized it in a way that doesn't affect how she feels about our family. I've been looking at lawyers online, but I haven't contacted anyone yet. I keep thinking about our son, about how this will destroy everything we've built. But I also keep thinking about those hugs, about them playing house with my baby while I'm working my ass off to provide for us. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I know I can't keep living like this.